An old king stands in a temple filled with foreign gods. Not Yahweh's temple, the magnificent structure he built for the God of Israel. This is different, smaller, private, hidden on a hill east of Jerusalem. Smoke rises from altars to Ashtoreth, goddess of the Sidonians, to Chemosh, god of Moab, to Milcom, the abomination of Ammon. Solomon doesn't lead the worship. He merely stands there, tolerating it, funding it, enabling it. His 700 wives and 300 concubines worship their gods while he watches, his heart divided, his wisdom useless against the slow erosion of compromise. He remembers the dream at Gibeon, when God appeared and asked, "What should I give you?" Young Solomon, barely more than a boy, asked for wisdom, not wealth, not power, not long life, just an understanding heart to govern God's people. God gave him all of it, wisdom unsurpassed, wealth unmeasured, 40 years of reign, and Solomon used every gift to build this. Temples to idols, alliances with pagans, a divided heart that would divide a kingdom. The wisest man who ever lived became the greatest fool. This is how the Golden Age ends, not with invasion, but with apostasy. Not with defeat, but with slow, luxurious decay. But the story doesn't begin here. It begins with a boy who chose wisdom over everything else. Act 1. The gift of wisdom. When God offered everything. Solomon was just 12 years old when he became king. His father David, warrior, psalmist, giant killer, had united Israel and made Jerusalem the capital. But David's final years were messy. His sons fought for succession. Adonijah attempted a coup. Only swift action by Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, secured Solomon's throne. David's final words to Solomon were clear: "Be strong, show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires." Soon after ascending the throne, Solomon went to Gibeon, where the ancient tabernacle stood, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings. That night, God appeared to him in a dream. "Ask what I shall give you." Imagine that moment, God himself offering anything: youth, beauty, military power, the death of enemies, treasure beyond counting. Solomon could have asked for anything. Instead, Solomon said, "You have shown great love to your servant David my father. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child, and do not know how to carry out my duties. Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." God was delighted. "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor." Solomon woke up. It was a dream, but it was also real. The wisdom was his. The wealth would come. The honor would follow. The first test arrived immediately. Act 2. The judgment that defined him. 2 women, 1 child, 1 sword.
2 prostitutes came to King Solomon, both claiming to be the mother of the same living baby. They lived in the same house. Each had given birth to a son within days of each other. One baby died in the night when the mother accidentally lay on him. Now both women claimed the living child. "This woman's son died in the night. She switched our babies while I slept." "No, the living one is mine, the dead one is hers." Back and forth they argued. No witnesses, no evidence, just 2 voices, both insisting, both desperate. Solomon proposed a solution. "Bring me a sword." They brought a sword. "Cut the living child in 2 and give half to one and half to the other." The first woman agreed. "Neither of us will have him. Divide him." The second woman was deeply moved out of love for her son and cried out, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." Solomon declared, "Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother." When all Israel heard the verdict, they held the king in awe because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. The wisdom of Solomon was the ability to discern the precise character of the litigants who stood in front of him. The accurate assessment that his charade would be effective was the product of his great wisdom and a clear display of it. Fame spread, not just in Israel, but beyond its borders. The young king wasn't just wise, he was legendary. Act 3. The Temple of God. 7 years of glory. David wanted to build God a temple, but God told him no. His hands had shed too much blood. The honor would go to Solomon, the man of peace. Construction began around 667 BCE. Solomon conscripted 30,000 laborers, sent them to Lebanon in rotating shifts to cut cedar. He quarried massive stones, some weighing tons, perfectly fitted so no hammer or chisel was heard at the building site. 150,000 workers labored for 7 years. The temple was stunning, overlaid with gold, cedar walls carved with palm trees, flowers, and cherubim. The inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant would rest, gleaming with pure gold. Bronze pillars flanking the entrance, named Jachin and Boaz. A bronze sea, a massive basin resting on 12 bronze oxen, holding thousands of gallons for ritual washing. When the temple was finished, Solomon assembled all Israel. Priests from the Levitical tribe conducted the religious rites. Elders and dignitaries from each tribe attended, representing all 12 tribes. Levites played musical instruments, facilitating worship through song. They brought the Ark of the Covenant into the most holy place. As the priests withdrew, a cloud filled the temple. The glory of the Lord so thick that the priests couldn't perform their service. Solomon prayed, "The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built? Yet give attention to your servant's prayer." The dedication fulfilled the covenant between God and Israel, symbolizing divine presence. Israel had never seen anything like it. The golden age had arrived. But then Solomon did something that should have raised alarm. Over the next 13 years, he built his own palace. It took nearly twice as long as God's temple. Priorities were shifting.
Act 4. The Queen and the Gold. When fame reached Arabia. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, which brought honor to the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions.
She arrived in Jerusalem with a large group of attendants and a great caravan of camels loaded with spices, large quantities of gold, and precious jewels. She talked with Solomon about everything she had on her mind. Solomon had answers for all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the queen saw the wisdom of Solomon, the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. "I didn't believe what was said until I arrived here and saw it with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be! Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel." She gave the king 120 talents of gold, about 9,000 pounds, great quantities of spices and precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Solomon's wealth became legendary. Each year Solomon received about 25 tons of gold, not including the additional revenue from merchants, traders, kings of Arabia, and governors. He made silver as plentiful in Jerusalem as stone. His throne was overlaid with gold. His drinking cups were solid gold. People from every nation came to consult him and hear the wisdom God had given him. Solomon authored multiple books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, 3,000 proverbs, 1,005 songs, treatises on plants and animals. His wisdom spanned every subject. But wisdom and folly can coexist in the same heart, and Solomon was proving it. Act 5. The Slow Descent. 700 wives and a divided heart. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. The wives were described as foreign princesses, including Pharaoh's daughter and women of Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and of the Hittites. Why so many? Partly lust, partly politics. Each marriage was an alliance. Partly pride. In the ancient world, harems displayed power, but mostly disobedience. Deuteronomy 17:17 explicitly warned, "He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray." God knew. He always knew. Multiply wives, multiply problems. Multiply foreign wives who worship foreign gods, and you multiply spiritual disaster. For years, Solomon managed the tension. He worshipped Yahweh publicly, while privately tolerating his wives' idolatry. He built them temples, small ones, discreet ones, outside Jerusalem proper. Just places for them to worship, harmless, he told himself. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. Read that again. Not wholly true, partially true, divided, compromised. Solomon permitted his foreign wives to import their national deities, building temples to Ashtoreth and Milcom. He even participated in their worship. The man who built God's temple now built temples to demons. The wisest man in the world couldn't see his own folly. Solomon's sin in building pagan high places perpetuated idolatry in Jerusalem and the kingdom for the next 300 years. What we do in private doesn't stay private. Our compromises corrupt generations. Solomon's divided heart has implications for his ability to direct his worldly effect wholly to the Lord. You cannot serve two masters. Solomon tried. Solomon failed. Act 6. God's anger. When judgment comes for the wise. God appeared to Solomon a second time, not in a dream this time, not with offers of gifts, with fury. Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. The punishment was severe, but mitigated. Solomon would keep the throne during his life, but his son would rule only Judah and Benjamin, 2 tribes out of 12. 10 tribes would rebel and form the northern kingdom of Israel. The united kingdom Solomon inherited would shatter. The peace David established would end. The golden age would become a memory. All because of 700 wives and a heart that wouldn't choose. The story we have of Solomon's life and death indicates no repentance, no confession, no turning back. He lived with compromise until he died with it. Solomon reigned for 40 years, the same as his father David. He died around 930 BCE, and his son Rehoboam succeeded him.
Act 7. The Kingdom Divides. The Legacy of Compromise. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam decided to increase the people's burdens rather than lighten them. Solomon's building projects had required heavy taxation and forced labor. The people asked for relief. Rehoboam consulted his father's old advisors, who counseled mercy. Then he consulted his young friends, who urged him to be even harsher. Rehoboam chose poorly. "My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." 10 tribes revolted and made Jeroboam their king. The kingdom split into Israel, north, and Judah, south. Within less than 200 years, Israel fell to Assyria in 721 BCE. Judah fell to Babylon in 587 BCE. The magnificent temple Solomon built, destroyed by the Babylonians, burned, plundered, reduced to rubble. Everything Solomon built, gone. But the idolatry he introduced, that survived. The high places he built east of Jerusalem remained for 300 years until King Josiah finally destroyed them. We inherit our predecessors' righteousness. We inherit their sins even more. Epilogue: The Wisest Fool. Remember the opening. The old king standing in a temple to foreign gods, heart divided, wisdom wasted, compromise complete. Solomon wrote the Song of Solomon, the book of Ecclesiastes, and much of the book of Proverbs. In Ecclesiastes, written late in life, he reflects on the emptiness of it all. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. He had everything: wisdom beyond measure, wealth beyond counting, fame beyond borders, peace without war, building projects that dazzled nations, 1,000 women, everything. And it was all meaningless without wholehearted devotion to God. Fear God and keep His commandments, Ecclesiastes concludes, for this is the whole duty of man. Solomon knew the truth. He wrote the truth. He just didn't live it. 3,000 years later, we remember Solomon for his wisdom and his folly, the judgment of the 2 mothers, the temple's magnificence, the Queen of Sheba's awe, and the 700 wives who turned his heart from God. Jesus referenced Solomon. "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." Solomon's glory was temporary. Flowers fade, temples crumble, kingdoms divide. Only God's kingdom endures.
In another place, Jesus said, "The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with the men of this generation and condemn them. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here." Solomon was great, but Jesus is greater. Solomon was wise, but Jesus is wisdom incarnate. Solomon built a temple, but Jesus is the temple. Solomon's kingdom divided, but Jesus' kingdom is eternal. The lesson of Solomon isn't complicated. Wisdom without obedience is worthless. Knowledge without devotion is dangerous. You can know all the right answers and make all the wrong choices. God gave Solomon everything he asked for and everything he didn't ask for. Solomon used it all to build an empire that lasted 1 generation. The moment his son took the throne, it shattered. Contrast that with David, Solomon's father. David committed adultery. David murdered. David sinned grievously. But when confronted, David repented. David's heart remained undivided. David's line, flawed, broken, sinful David's line, produced the Messiah. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, produced nothing lasting. No spiritual legacy, no righteous descendants leading Israel, just a divided kingdom, 300 years of idolatry, and a cautionary tale. The temple Solomon built was magnificent, but 1 King spends 7 chapters describing it and 13 chapters describing Solomon's palace. The proportions reveal his priorities. After the temple was dedicated and all the celebrations had ended, the Israelites returned home. Everyone was filled with joy. But Solomon was beginning to focus on the things that he owned, rather than on the God who had given them to him. That's the shift, from giver to gifts, from worship to wealth, from covenant to compromise. It happened slowly. 1 foreign wife for political alliance, then another, then a temple for her gods, just a small one, just to keep peace, then worship at that temple, just to show respect, not true worship. Then his heart turns, then God's judgment falls, then the kingdom divides, then everything crumbles. Sin is never content with small concessions. Give it an inch, it takes a kingdom. Today, when people speak of Solomon, they mean 2 different men. Young Solomon, who chose wisdom and built the temple. Old Solomon, who chose wives and built high places. Same person, different hearts. One wholly devoted, one wholly divided. The tragedy is that Solomon knew better. He wrote, "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life." He wrote, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death." He wrote, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart." He knew. He taught others, but he didn't do it himself. The wisest man who ever lived became the greatest fool. Not because he lacked knowledge, because he lacked obedience. Not because he didn't know God's will, because he chose his own. The sword Solomon raised over the baby became a metaphor. He could discern between 2 mothers, but he couldn't discern between truth and compromise in his own heart. He could judge others with divine wisdom, but he couldn't judge himself. God offered Solomon anything. Solomon asked for wisdom. God gave him wisdom, wealth, and honor. Solomon used them all to build temples to false gods. What a waste. What a tragedy. What a warning.